Hello, friends. It's Nancy from Astrology and Angel Mediums today with another Show Me How You Practice video. Today, I'm going to be talking about personal astrology. And I'm calling it personal astrology because I'm just going to talk about how to find your birth chart and how to kind of understand what it means whenever you're looking at your birth chart. So there are some apps that you can use to kind of help you understand your birth chart, your natal chart, or whatever you want to call it, and to kind of help you understand some of like your personal placements as well as like what that means overall. One of the ones that I do recommend is like Astro. It's called. Oh my gosh, I think it's like Time Passages. That's a really good one. I don't have a Apple phone, so I don't really know. I have used CoStar. I think it's okay. There's been other ones that I think have been okay, but the Time Passages app is great. It's usually pretty accurate as far as like actually reading your chart without kind of changing everything all over the place. The pattern was a weird one, so I really wouldn't recommend that one too much. But if you can possibly go and actually go look at your chart, I feel like that's going to be the best way for you to have an understanding of your chart. So I was going to do my personal chart, and then I was like, I don't want all my business out there. So we're going to be reviewing Marilyn Monroe's chart. And this is just from astro.com. It's a free website. You can utilize it. And there's like different chart readings and stuff like that on there as well. Lots of fun things on the website. I've been using it for, I don't even know, it's got to be at least like 15 years or something now at this point. And it is my go-to because I love the options as far as like how you pull up a chart and what it is that you want to show up on your chart. Now, this is a copy of a picture that somebody had posted on the website because I didn't feel like inputting in her information. So I'm just going to talk about how to read your personal astrology chart and also some book recommendations. I don't have all of them here. I'll probably do a separate video of like astrology books that I love and that I have used over the years and that I always recommend to people that are, diving a little bit deeper into astrology and that also like to read because I know it's not for everybody. And I know that there's so many facets and so many different ways of kind of going into astrology as well as like the different like modalities that you can use it for. So good ones are going to be like You Don't Really Believe in Astrology, Do You? By Pam Gregory, The Cosmic Calendar, and The Rise and Shine books by Christopher Rundstrom. Both of these are great for different reasons. They do talk about more personal placements. And then the Moon Sign Guide book by Annabelle Gatt, which again, I talked about this in my previous Show Me How You Practice video about moon phases and using that like with your astrology. So if we look at a chart, when we're looking at it and you're like, I don't know where to start, we always start with this part right here where it says AC. Sometimes it'll say ASC. I'm gonna here we go. Maybe this will be better. So you can just look at the chart. So usually the chart will show you the information, things like that, but we always want to start here. So you read a chart, what is this, like counterclockwise? Maybe clockwise? No, counterclockwise, I believe. So you start here and then you go down and you go around. So this is going to be the first house. So we have this little number 1. It's real tiny. I'm going to right there. All right. So we have that number 1 right there. I'm like, maybe I'll zoom all the way in. Is that like too much? Okay. We'll do it like this. So as we can see, this is called a glyph, which I talked about in one of my previous videos. And so this is the glyph or the symbol for Leo. So Marilyn Monroe was an ascendant at 13 degrees Leo. As we can see, she has right here, this is another glyph, and this is going to be a Neptune symbol. So she had Neptune on the ascendant, and then this chart has extra points that they've added onto here, but I really wouldn't worry about this because that's a little bit more advanced. So we're not going to talk about that. So here we have number 2. So this is her second house. This is not whole sign astrology for those that like are very strict about whole house astrology. I am not big on whole house astrology. I just kind of let it be what it is. But whole house astrology is also a way that people prefer to do chart readings. So here we have the second house, which is ruled by Virgo. Moving on, her third house is in Libra, or Libra rules over her third house. Her fourth house is ruled by Scorpio. And here we have Saturn in Scorpio. So we have the glyph or the symbol for the planet Saturn, and we have the glyph or the symbol for Scorpio, which is right here. The fifth house is ruled by Sagittarius. Her sixth house is ruled by Capricorn. We're seeing those slices. Here we have seventh house, which is the descendant, DC. And I didn't mention the IC or the Indium Coli, which is essentially the lowest point of the chart. And then at the top, we have the midheaven or medium coli, which is going to be the highest point of a chart. So the descendant or DC in the chart here, we have Aquarius ruling over her seventh house, and she had her moon in Aquarius, which is actually pretty close, maybe within, some people don't consider this conjunct, but I do. I feel like a 10-degree orb is still pretty conjunct. It still is an influential sort of energy with her Jupiter in Aquarius conjunct her moon. So the seventh house, and then we move on to the eighth house, which here she has her Mars and also Uranus in Pisces. We move on to her ninth house, where she has her Venus conjunct her Chiron, but her Venus is in Aries and her Chiron, because it's at 0 degrees, is actually in Taurus. If we move on, for her 10th house in the midheaven, this is the highest point of the chart. This is going to show you like the highest potential for this person's energy. Next to that, we have her Mercury in actually Gemini, not Taurus. And then we also have her Sun in Gemini because she was born June 1st. So she's a Gemini. And then we move on to her 11th house, which is ruled by Gemini. Her 12th house, or actually her Pluto is actually still in, or sorry, her Pluto is in either the 11th house, maybe the 12th house, the beginning of the 12th house, Pluto in Cancer, and it is conjunct her North Node or her soul's kind of like purpose in the 12th house in Cancer. So when we're talking about personal astrology, it's easy to have an understanding of like where our sun sign is. That's usually going to be this symbol right here, where it looks like a circle with a little tiny circle on the inside. That is the symbol for the sun. And so that essentially is kind of letting you know where the sun was on the day that you were born. So this is where you're going to see a lot of people basing a lot of their horoscopes and things of that nature off of, versus like being a little bit more understanding that a lot of the other planets do influence how you're going to react to things. So while she may have been a Gemini sun sign, a lot of people may have perceived her more as like her Leo rising, and kind of maybe have seen her as, another thing that I've heard was that people will see you like as your midheaven. So maybe this is why there's like this whole thing of like her being like a sex symbol, materialistic, kind of like, very much about her status and things of that nature, because people were seeing her off of her midheaven, which is in the sign of Taurus. And she had a lot of wounds regarding how other people perceived her and things of that nature, and having to like really feel like she really couldn't be herself. Or there's that like that sex symbol kind of energy where she felt very insecure about those things. So when I'm talking about personal astrology, it's important to have an understanding of your sun sign, your rising sign, your moon sign, your Venus, and your Mercury, as well as your Mars. Those are called our personal planets because those are going to be directly more like, they have faster transit, so they're constantly a little bit more in motion than some of the generational planets, or the ones that are outside of like, the asteroid belt. So this is going to be like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Those are going to be more of the like social or kind of like generational planets. So those don't really affect us one-on-one as much, because it's going to be something that maybe, excuse me, as a generation, we may feel a connection to the experiences that those planets also affect. Now, it isn't to say that they don't affect you personally, because obviously everyone's chart is unique and everyone has different placements or different things. As we can see, she has a lot of these red lines in her chart, which are known as astrological aspects, and these are squares. So she has a lot of things that are kind of square. Squares are going to be slightly more difficult energies because it's not in flow quite as easily. The energies are going to feel like they're at odds, not so much as like an opposition. And then we also have like conjunct. So that's where it's going to be like right next to each other. There's also in conjuncts, there's going to be oppositions, there's going to be trines, which is going to be like these blue lines, where we see this huge trine in her chart between Pluto, Saturn, and also Mars. Very masculine energies, right? Which is interesting because she was seen as a sex symbol, which, you know, she was placed there by the male gaze and how other men kind of perceived her. And it being in water signs shows that she had a lot of sensitivity about it, where she was very malleable and flexible as far as like how other people perceived her or saw her versus how she viewed herself and how she really was internally. As far as like personal astrology, it's good to have an understanding of like where your planets are. So knowing what signs that they're in and also what houses can really help you have an understanding as to what your soul is either trying to learn this lifetime regarding that, or what it means for you as far as like, you know, if you have a lot of these planets in the same house, or a lot of things that are kind of like going on within that, you know, house, you can see why there may be some challenges. So for her, she had Jupiter and the moon in the seventh house. I know that she had been married a couple of times, had some issues in some of her relationships. This can show that this is someone that maybe doesn't always clearly see their partners the way that they really are, maybe liked very quirky or very interesting or unique sort of people, was attracted to sort of things like that. That was very unconventional, as well as maybe really wanting to be with people that like had and shared the same sort of beliefs that she had, just because we have Jupiter there, as well as expanding. So it almost would feel like a lot of her relationships were kind of under the microscope for everyone to kind of dissect and kind of look at, just because of the moon and Jupiter being there in Aquarius. It's a very unique kind of situation. It's going to feel a little bit weird. Just things like that. So having an understanding of what house those planets are in are also going to let you know what's kind of going on with that. Her having Neptune on the ascendant, I think that this gives this kind of like ethereal kind of quality. This like, you can't really pin it down. As we can see, she has a lot of these like it girl factor kind of placements with Venus in the ninth house, as well as it being in Aries, but then conjunct Chiron. It gives her this like, oh, I want to kind of take care of her and, you know, show up for her and kind of see what she has going on. But the Leo ascendant with Neptune right there, where people like, maybe she was very good at like wearing these masks and kind of like being what other people may have expected of her, but that doesn't really mean like that's who she truly really was. And as you know, it's been many years since she's passed. A lot of people have come forward and said like the way people perceived her was nothing like how she really was in real life. So I think having an understanding of the placements will really help you in seeing how that is translating in your day-to-day life. And this is why I always tell people, like, start with your own chart, because typically we have a deeper understanding of who we are first versus trying to read somebody else's chart. And I only chose her because she's a public figure. A lot of people can kind of see and have heard, you know, different things about who she was as an individual, kind of know a little bit about her life story, having Saturn in the 4th house in Scorpio, no less, can show that maybe there is a lot of abuse, a lot of like not really being able to be herself, having controlling kind of parentage, some sort of like almost obsessiveness that was kind of happening around her, or, you know, something like a lot of shifts and changes and kind of like not really having too much of a good solid foundation for her. Maybe it was something that was completely transforming for her in a lot of different ways. So it can really talk about like that strict kind of upbringing and then kind of moving out of that energy, and it being square her moon. It can again kind of show like that that challenge between the relationship of structure, rigidity, and her feelings, her intuition. And I think she married pretty young. So that totally would be something I would say, like, if I were to kind of be interpreting this chart, I'd be like, maybe this is someone that wanted to run away from home from a very young age and decided to kind of like go off with the first person. That maybe would have been a very unconventional sort of relationship for her, things of that nature. And just because we also have a square with Neptune, where maybe she doesn't really quite clearly see her partners for who they are, and maybe even just like having that identity crisis between what she wanted to have in relationships and what she was actually receiving. So there's a little bit of that, kind of having those understandings whenever you start kind of putting it all together. And I may start doing like a whole astrology series. I also have like my Astro Basics astrology guide for like basic astrology, and kind of like it does dive a little bit deeper into different things to kind of help you understand how to read your charts and how to feel a little bit more comfortable with reading your own chart. But having an understanding of each of the houses is also going to really benefit you, so that you can really see maybe like what those lessons are for you this lifetime. So I really hope that this video has helped you kind of get a grasp on what a chart looks like, how to read it, what some of the glyphs are, or even maybe just like opened up some of your curiosity so that you feel a little bit more inclined to want to go study a little bit more and find out how to read your own personal chart. So if you have any questions, please let me know down below. I want to say thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to share the different things that I love on my channel. Please take care, stay safe, and as always, make good choices. Bye.